Hello again from Wellington, New Zealand. Paul Brennan here, and
Martin Noakes.
We're here to talk about aviation again. And gosh, that 2 weeks, it just rockets by, doesn't it?
Certainly does. Jets past.
Jets past. Now, plenty of things have happened in the world of aviation. One of the anticipated events, as far as we've been concerned for the last few programs, and of course the enthusiast world, is the rollout of the Airbus A320 NEO new engine option. It's happened.
What a great looking plane, eh?
And just to start the program, for those on the YouTube version, here's some footage of that rollout. For those listening on radio, well, I guess the best way to describe it is that it looks like an A320, but the engines are completely different.
Much bigger. It brings the whole plane into what I think is into proportion. It looks like a miniature 777.
Doesn't it? And it's good to see that Pratt & Whitney Dependable Engines logo back on an engine.
Yeah, the eagle and the globe.
Yep, it's been a while. One of the 777 models would have been the last to get a new Pratt & Whitney engine.
The Pratt & Whitney 4090.
Where did they go wrong?
Fuel burn. They seemed not to make the big leaps that Rolls-Royce and General Electric did. Perhaps it was a risk aversion, who knows, but they weren't that great.
Because in their time, back in the day, they were the leaders.
They certainly
were.
Big
time.
And maybe they rested on their laurels a bit too much.
Mind you, if you read the book written by the father of the 747, Joe Sutter, he talks about the early engine problems with the JT9.
Right.
And they almost had to threaten Pratt & Whitney to get them to finally deliver on the performance of those engines. They mucked around, dragged the chain, almost as if they didn't realize it was actually a commercial proposition, you know?
Yeah, I've read also in various books about jet engines that Pratt & Whitney were relatively arrogant up until sort of the 80s. And they had, I mean, it was so easy for them, wasn't there? There were all these 727s and all that. And
7.3s, DC-9s.
Everything, yeah.
Even the Caravelle.
Yep.
And, of course, all the early 707s, apart from the Conway power ones, and they were only a handful. They're all Pratts. So
they had quite a few of
the whole thing. And they had DC-8, didn't they?
Yeah, DC-8. Early 747s, lots of them.
Back to the NEO, they're talking about a 15% improvement with the Sharklets and the NEO engine. Aren't orders already over a couple of thousand for this model?
2,600.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, backlog 2,600.
So the thing flies, what, in a month or two?
Yep. So it's ground testing at the moment, rolled out the hangar, going for testing, and they'll be flying it August, September.
This is a more powerful engine than the one on the C Series.
The next step up. So I think it has one more high-pressure compressor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's, the A321neo would be the next one, wouldn't it?
A321, A319 are coming out roughly the same time within a month of each other. I think that's in 2016, I think they're due, early 2016.
So we know that the launch customer for the A320neo, I think, is the International Lease Finance Corporation, and maybe even for the A321. That doesn't break it down into the airlines.
Not yet.
But see, Qatar is the launch customer for the A319 neo.
That's going to be a great looking plane, and it'll be fascinating whether that gearbox and that engine actually does deliver an up to 15% improvement.
Well, it would have to, wouldn't it?
And according to all tests, it's actually coming in slightly ahead of what they were banking on, so good luck to them.
And there's the CFM Leap X engine option as well.
It's a re-engineered version of the current engine, basically. It runs at a lot higher temperature, higher pressure ratio, and a bigger fan. So they hope to achieve similar efficiencies by using metallurgy and different aerodynamics, whereas Pratt & Whitney have pinned all their hopes on gearing the fan, which is an interesting approach, and it looks like it's working.
What's the difference?
Pratt & Whitney, by being able to put a gearbox between the actual jet engine and the fan, they can go for a smaller, lighter, much hotter running and therefore more efficient jet engine, running at an optimum speed all the time, powering a gearbox which then turns a very big fan very efficiently.
So the majority of the thrust is off the big fan?
The bypass ratio is 12-1.
Right. And the hot part of the engine, rather than developing core thrust like the older engines, it's powering
it's putting
the fan,
a lot of its energy into powering the fan, yes, which makes for a very quiet engine because you've got so much air going around the core, and a very fuel-efficient engine. LEAP, of course, or CFM, they're also high bypass ratio. 10-1 is the bypass ratio as opposed to 12
to 1.
So
that's not a geared turbofan.
No. So Pratt & Whitney have put all their eggs into this gearbox basket.
The fact that it wasn't done before, is that because gearboxes haven't been up to it?
Your reliability was always seen to be a problem. In fact, it has been done before. The BAE 146 for that Lycoming, that was a geared turbofan, but much less power. They were much weaker engines.
Right.
I mean, the top of the range that they're currently developing or selling is £35,000, but they are saying they see no reason why you couldn't gear a £100,000 thrust engine given the technology they've developed.
Weren't you mentioning a program or two back that Rolls-Royce were
Well,
looking at this sort of area now for the big engines?
Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney are quite close. Rolls-Royce have licensed the gearbox technology off.
Okay, so something could happen there.
Yeah.
All right, so it'll be September before that thing flies. Looking forward to that. And, of course, I think Air New Zealand's ordered
Yep, they'll
the
be done here.
A321 NEO anyway, haven't they?
That's going to be a very interesting plane.
Looking forward to that one.
As we know, Farnborough is coming up, the Farnborough Airshow, the big one.
Yep.
It starts on the 14th to the 18th for trade, and then the public can visit from the 18th to the 20th.
Right.
Never been, though my sister doesn't live far away, and I've often thought, why don't I get myself over there at the right time of year, and I've never managed it.
It's one that I haven't been to either, though I've watched a lot of the videos, and especially the older ones from the 50s and 60s with the, the Rotodyne and all that sort of stuff going around, but it's always been... Well, one of the biggies.
Yeah.
Especially for showcasing products. It's not a fun... It's an industry show, isn't it?
It's mainly a trade show, yeah. The public are only really allowed in for the last 3 days.
Yeah.
So last time we mentioned Farnborough, I was hoping that we're going to see a whole slew of A330 NEO orders.
From Emirates, I think you were picking.
Yeah, and Delta and all these guys.
Yeah, but...
it seems unlikely.
No.
It looks like the program is... pretty certain to go ahead, but Airbus is not promising anything for the Farnborough show. However, that just might be... They might be gaming us to get us all excited.
Yeah, you dangle something a bit more than...
Yeah.
Not claiming not to be announcing something if you wanted to do that.
We'll see.
Well, you can't call them totally accurately all the time.
No, not all the time, no. Okay. Air New Zealand will be represented. They're displaying their fifth 787-900.
They've got 5 already.
Well, I'm a bit puzzled at that. So maybe it's the 5th one due to be delivered then, and so it's taking a break from flight testing to go to Farnborough. I don't know.
I think they've ordered 10, haven't they?
They've ordered 10.
I'm starting to think that because of the delays they've suffered, maybe part of the compensation was promising, well, we need all these things at once.
Get them quickly.
Because otherwise we can't make any of these things work. So the delay is one thing, but if you can't get them to us within reasonable time as a fleet, that's also another
delay.
problem.
A
so,
rollout delay.
In the end they said, sure, what if you can get 10 within a month?
Yeah, I guess, of course, the longer they don't have them, the longer they're not making as much money out of them.
Or 5 in a month.
Yeah.
Because you can't do a service with one aircraft.
No. The first one's arriving this week.
Yeah.
As we speak, probably.
Wow, the black one, huh?
Yeah. And then
is that number 1, or don't we know?
These numbers, how do they work,
Yeah,
it's like with the Airbus flight testing for the A350. Serial number 1 flew, then serial number 3, then 2, then 4.
It's sort of odd order, Okay, so we'll see some... dramatic takeoff and landing shots of the 789 from Farnborough, or is it just static only?
No, apparently it's going to be flying around, doing its thing.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be worth looking at.
Boeing pilots would fly that, though, wouldn't they? How do they work? How would they work the insurance on that?
Depends who owns the plane at the time, doesn't it? I mean, I can't imagine.
They don't usually let them drive it off the lot until the money's changed.
Exactly. So it's either being flown to New Zealand via Farnborough, or it's come across from Boeing on a testing flight. We'll do some flight display there, then fly back to Seattle.
Okay, well, look out for that one. I guess that'll be covered here. That's sort of made news here, actually. It's been in a few papers and a few websites. A bit of a big deal, and gets the Kangaroo out there. So that's good. Speaking of Air New Zealand, this is an oddball one. The story that broke over last weekend of the captain not letting the co-pilot into the flight deck on the flight back from Perth back in May, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was all over some sort of hissy fit over a delay caused by a drug test. Well, how could a crew member have any control over that, is what I'm thinking.
Random drug test.
Apparently he was a stickler for leaving on time. Maybe and some people looms very large and they get very upset if they're not able to maintain their perfect record.
Those reports came under a little bit of criticism from some of the aviation press, who were saying that by revealing that there is an because apparently the co-pilot and the cabin crew had to resort to the alternate entry method.
Now, what would that be?
Who knows? It took a fair bit of criticism for revealing there is one.
That's an alternate. That's not the main door. There must be another hatch in or something.
It can't be. I think maybe the wording was incorrect. Maybe there's a
code.
A code to say, listen, guys, I'm not kidding. Let me in.
Or you have to get a key from
or something.
The 2 separate crew members or something. And like the nuclear codes.
Because if it's just a secret way of getting in, you guarantee the evildoers know.
Yeah, they've already done their research.
Yeah.
They've watched YouTube. That behaviour by the captain's been questioned.
Oh, it seems very odd. Not very professional.
Yeah, sort of obsessive and sort of weird, slightly weird. Because the last thing you want to do is get people scared.
Well, from what we've heard, it does sound very odd. Maybe it's all perfectly legitimate and all a massive misunderstanding.
Well, they had counselling.
Yeah.
So that should fix it.
Oh, that'll work, yeah.
He's probably a bit stressed out.
Yeah, but grumpy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not letting you back in.
Bit sick of the Perth run.
Yeah.
I don't like your aftershave or your deodorant or
I'll
something.
lock you out.
You might have said something narky to him.
Yeah.
I guess in the bigger airlines around the world where chances are you probably haven't flown with that guy before, or only once, maybe years ago or whatever. Perhaps people aren't so personal, but I guess in a smaller airline you probably do know the chap.
Each other, yeah.
You've come across each other every now and then. Maybe they didn't like each other.
Who knows?
Gosh, Qantas has a time of it, doesn't it? Not only are they looking down the barrel, some say, of $1 billion plus loss in the next year or so after a $256 million loss in the first 6 months of the year. The water pipe bursts on an A380 out of LA and rivers of water gushing down the top deck floor. Rivers of water.
Yeah, well,
freaking everyone out.
There would be a lot of water on the plane, I suppose.
Yeah, well, enough for however many hundred.
Yeah, and it seemed to affect an area between I think I was reading somewhere between sort of rows 42 and 68 or whatever.
Down
like
the back.
22 and 47.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but quite a lot of water, to the extent that they were having to take off external body panels in the hold and that and actually see where the water had collected and whether it was water damage.
Really? What, after it landed?
Yeah, no, somebody's published the job sheet of all the tasks they had to go through. So they had to take out the interior, ceiling panels.
Oh, no.
Yeah, between the two decks. Lift floor panels, go into the hold, take out wall panels, go outside the plane, take off external panels. They had to check the in-flight entertainment system, all the electrical conduits. I mean, standard stuff, but...
Big job.
Quite a lot of work.
I've seen a movie on the A380 where those systems were laid out on the iron bird or whatever they call it. And there's a lot of water piping on that top floor.
Yes. It goes between them. It's a sandwich,
Yeah, it's utility water and toilet water and drinking water.
Because it's easy to get to.
So you can just imagine, though, the chaos it could cause.
Yeah.
The language was a little
hysterical.
Over the top, Rivers.
Of water.
I doubt rivers. But alarming, enough to turn back. Well, you wouldn't want to be flying over the Pacific with...
On a wet seat.
Yeah, with water...
gushing everywhere. Rivers of water.
Yeah, accumulating and shorting things out.
Yeah.
Back to the performance of Qantas financially. I mean, how do you come back from that? I see a lot of that loss they're talking about is getting rid of 2,500 people, the redundancy payments of that, which are one-off. But still, once you're on the wrong way roll, it's hard to come back, isn't it?
I think it's an actual loss of 700 million, boosted by redundancy costs and everything else to 1 billion, possibly 1.2, the analysts are now saying. As you say, it just gets worse and worse for them.
Mm-hmm. And the perception sets in after a while, and that's the real hard thing to turn around, that it's not the carrier to fly with anymore, it's no good.
Well, as I keep saying, most of my Aussie mates, if they get a choice, they fly Emirates now.
Yeah.
Better product.
And I see the Labour Party now is starting to talk, in Australia, is starting to talk about not so much letting go of the 49% ownership threshold that exists for international owners, but maybe looking at throwing away that 25% limit on individual shareholdings.
Yeah, but if you can't control it, and it's a sinking ship, you're not going to buy it, are you? You want a controlling interest.
If it's fire, well, of course, you need to have a controlling interest.
Yeah, and the government won't let you have that, 49%.
Yeah, but if your flag carrier with the Kangaroo on the back just ain't doing it for people anymore, we've talked about this before, do you carry on with that branding?
Yeah.
Is it going to work into the future?
They can't let Qantas die. They can't. It might be reduced to sort of the Kangaroo run.
But it's got to be attractive.
It has to be.
I mean, they're up against the Middle Eastern carriers, and they're up against...
Some of the crazy things they're talking about
New Zealand
is... Qantas have got some very well-priced 787, 800 and 900 slots for, I think, 2016, 17.
Yeah.
There's even talk of them selling those planes on the moment they get them.
Right, just to get cash in.
Because they got the really early deal where there were reports that Boeing were knocking them off 787, 800s for $120-odd million.
Yeah.
It's double that now.
Right.
And Qantas have got the rights for these, whether or not take them and just let them go.
Yeah.
It's happened before where...
Sell them and lease them back.
Apparently Air Canada did that. They back in the 90s, they got a whole lot of brand new 767s. They took delivery of them and sold them.
Oh, right.
They never, ever operated them.
Oh, okay.
Brand new planes just moving out.
Okay. So Qantas clearly still in trouble, and they've got that tie-up with Emirates, and how that will pan out in the future remains to be seen. Meantime, their competitor, Virgin Australia, has some really good friends now with Air New Zealand, Singapore Airlines and Etihad, and now Air New Zealand and Etihad getting closer together.
Yeah, they all
interesting
seem to be...
alliances developing here. in Melbourne and Los Angeles.
Yeah, they all seem to be getting on famously, and now Air New Zealand and Etihad are going to share port services in
I think
LA.
Air New Zealand's going to do LA for Etihad, and Etihad are going to do Air New Zealand in Melbourne.
Yeah, nice.
Quite a tight little group forming there.
Quite a useful group. You know, Etihad have got their part of the world. Air New Zealand does almost a completely different part of the world. I mean, they don't have the reach that the Qantas Emirates thing does with, like Manchester and Glasgow and all these places. But Etihad goes to a lot of places in Europe. Out of Qatar, they fly A320s to places like Budapest and Vienna and all this type of thing. So,
and Singapore's got quite a network.
Yeah, Singapore got a fantastic network.
Yeah, so you're not suffering
much.
No. And then, of course, there's the South American bit that
we keep
inevitably will be added on.
We think, we'd like to think so.
Well, they'll have enough planes, won't they?
Yeah.
We know that now.
Yeah.
Staying in this part of the world, and Air New Zealand are now going to move to allowing gate-to-gate use of electronic devices.
Yeah, finally.
Tablets and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you mean, finally?
It's been about time, hasn't it?
How come they've been so conservative up till now? Because I think it's been common knowledge that, crew use these things.
Yeah, exactly.
And, those electronic flight bags are just laptops, aren't they? I mean...
Yeah, or iPads or Samsung tablets.
Yeah, they're on all the time.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't done any testing or anything.
Yeah,
the manufacturers did that years ago, because the manufacturers, Airbus and Boeing, they've known for years that on every flight there's been X number of devices has been left on. And nothing happened.
I'm sure that on most flights, people leave, at least one person's left their cell phone on.
Well, I think that the statistics say that on every single transatlantic flight, there's at least 15 to 20 devices on in the luggage in some way that people just haven't turned off or put in flight mode.
Flight mode means it can't transmit. Is that what that means?
Cannot transmit. So
okay, so it can operate as a device with other applications, but just the transmission bit's disabled.
Yes.
Okay, so you can watch your movies and all of that.
Watch your movies, read your book on the Kindle.
Yeah, because I've often wondered why these things are okay at cruise altitude. And the other phases of flight, apparently, it's not okay. I've always sort of wondered about that.
Yeah.
Because what's the diff?
Yeah, exactly. The Americans allowed it sometime last year, and everyone's just following on.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Well, it's good for the customer.
Yeah.
Because it was inconvenient and a bit silly, and everyone knew it was silly.
Everyone knew it was silly,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Better late than never. Did you see those pictures of the 737 fuselages in that river in Montana?
Yeah. Fell off the train.
Yeah. Into the Clark Fork River.
I wonder what's going to happen to them, because at least one of them looks quite heavily damaged.
Oh, it's completely destroyed. It's sort of buckled at...
Got a big kink in it.
Yeah, the front end.
Yeah.
They still appear to be on their trailers.
Yeah, no, the train derailed, so the whole thing went in, yeah.
You see that there's a shot I'm looking at of the train and the things in the water, and up top you can still see there's a couple of fuselages still up on the train that didn't come down the bank.
The lucky ones.
But that just does remind me that I read somewhere, and it's quite possibly true, that the 737 is the width that it is because of the tunnels.
Yes, the old railway tunnels that go across the Rockies and that, yeah.
They made the fuselage pieces in Wichita, I think, and then shipped them for final assembly in Seattle. They had to get through those tunnels.
Yeah.
So they couldn't be any wider than they are.
Yeah, the same thing applies to the solid rocket boosters on the shuttle.
That's funny, that, isn't it?
Yeah, they had to fit to the American railway standard.
I guess it's the railways problem in the end and the insurer of the railways.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll sort something out.
Does that mean people will get their aircraft later than they thought?
Well,
or is their production output so strong that it really
they're pumping out like 24 a month, so it won't make that much of a difference. I guess that convoy would have been delayed for a while, so there might be a bit of a stutter.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it'll be too serious.
70 tons is the weight of the fuselage pieces.
Okay. They are saying it's quite difficult getting them out of the river.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to get some sort of crane up on the
Or maybe they'll
carriage that's got a crane on it or something.
I could imagine they'll drag them into the river and use airbags and float them down somewhere where they can get a cat crane to the beach.
Yeah. There was a funny photo I saw the other day of these rafters coming along and encountering these things. It was like wilderness man meets, high tech.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In the most unlikely
I think
place.
I saw that picture, yeah. But
Yeah,
it's
very
typical
funny.
Boeing, they always one-up Airbus. Airbus have a river flowing their A380, and then Boeing literally have a river flowing through 3 737s.
Yeah, that's right. I hadn't thought of it like that.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting one. Can you imagine a time when you get on an aircraft and, there's no cockpit up the front? It's just seats? Because Airbus have just patented a windowless cockpit design aircraft.
So the pilot would sit somewhere where there's less premium space and fly it via big screens.
Well, in the picture I put up for the YouTube folks, you can see that this one has the guy sitting in the tail.
Wow.
But if you've got HD surround screen...
Yeah, and stereo vision, because they're developing that type of thing.
You don't need
Well, I think
real vision, do you?
I think they actually say that the pilot could end up with an increased field of view because there'd be a massive wraparound screen, there'd be no cockpit frame, and considering that they spend a relatively large amount of their time flying on instruments anyway, what difference does it make?
The illustration that we've got here it looks like an A320 without any cockpit windows, but I'm sure that's just somebody's doodling rather than how it actually
They're not giving anything away in the patent application.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't have an aircraft of the day last week because we were sort of fixated on the F-35. That was fascinating, by the way.
Yeah.
And, of course, any Australians watching or listening, you might have a budget deficit, but it's going to get worse when you write the cheque for that thing. I think 35 billion Australian is what the Aussies are going to be spending. And another piece of news attached to that, you see Queen Elizabeth II christened the latest UK aircraft carrier, which is going to be fitted out with F-35s.
Yeah, and she christened it with a bottle of single malt whiskey as opposed to the champagne.
Not very traditional. But that's in service in 2020. That's years away.
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it?
Gosh, it's a long time between spending the money and getting the result.
Yeah.
Anyway, but our aircraft of the day, and it was suggested by one of our YouTube commenters, and it's a good choice too because there's a history of this aircraft in this part of the world, and it's probably one of the greatest Dutch aviation exports in history.
Well, they built a lot of them. They built nearly 600 of them, and then they went on to build another 200 odd of the advanced model, the Fokker 50.
So we're talking about the F-27?
Yep.
First flew in the 50s, if I remember right.
1958.
Well, that's quite a way back, and I do believe the first one is on display at a museum somewhere around Schiphol or Amsterdam area. But twin turboprop, high wing, using the Rolls-Royce Dart. I think it was always made for the Dart, wasn't it?
It was made for the Dart. They were very clever. They saw what Handley Page were doing and trumped them, and the Dutch went on to build 700 odd of these things, and the Handley Page Herald, which was very similar.
Initially as a piston, 4-engine piston.
It was typical English. They developed the Handley Page Herald. The turboprop was very, very new at the time. The operators they went to said, oh no, we'd prefer a piston engine because that's what we know. So they designed it with 4 quite low-powered radial engines. The Dutch came out, Dart, everyone cancelled their orders. Handley Page had sort of 30, 40 orders.
Right.
The Dart came on in the Friendship. They cancelled all orders. Handley Page didn't have anything. They re-engineered the plane, put darts in it. Pilots,
I think they only sold around 50.
50 odd. The pilots love them. Almost exactly the same weight, same speed, same range as the Fokker Friendship.
Old timers and those who like to watch archive video or movies will remember at the opening of Wellington Airport in 1959, and we'll put a piece up here to show it. The two faced off against each other. NAC, National Airways Corporation, were looking for the DC-3 replacement, and it was going to be either the Herald or the Friendship. And of course, the British had more pull on the decision because of the Empire thing.
Yeah.
The same thing happened for the BAC 111, the 737-1, of course. But they had both aircraft out here for the opening of the airport to demo it. They tried to outdo the performance of the F-27 and basically almost trashed the aircraft. All the brakes had to be replaced. I think there was a bit of damage to it because of the way they threw it around and really tried to show it off. And NAC bought, I think in the end, probably about 20 Friendships.
Well, it would have been on life cycle costs because once the Friendship orders started stacking up, the cost of maintenance, the cost of spare parts, the cost of this, cost of that, it would have just trounced the Handley Page.
I don't know much more than just assuming that there was some connection, but NAC, back in the day, had a very close connection with KLM.
Okay.
So I wonder if there was some sort of...
They would have got operating data or something out of them just to see if
or there was a closer relationship than you would expect. Yeah. So how many versions of the F-27? I'm aware of the 100 and the 500 because I think that's what we mainly had here, but obviously that suggests that there are more.
Yes. There was a 200, which is slightly changed engines, uprated engines. There was a 300. There were quick change versions. There were combi versions. There were military versions. The Americans operated a version called the C-31A. Then there was the Fairchild F-27, and then there was the Fairchild Hiller 227, which was an independently developed stretch version for the American market.
Plugs in or something.
Yeah, I think Fairchild in all built sort of 180, 200.
And operate in many parts of the world too.
All over the place. All through North America, South America, India flew them, China had them, all over the place. Australia was obviously a big operator, New Zealand.
Wasn't the plane with the soccer team that ended up eating themselves?
Oh, yeah.
An F-27?
Yeah, crashed in the Andes.
Yeah, I think it was.
And then, of course, the Fokker 50 came along, which was Pratt & Whitney engines, 6-bladed props, a lot quieter, quite a bit faster, and sort of jazzed up for the 90s. And last time I was in Holland, there were some city hoppers all lined up in KLM colours.
Aussie had them. I think they might still have them out of Perth. Sky
Yes,
West was the airline.
I've seen them in Perth.
I got some
yes.
footage that I took out in the 90s of them operating there. There's also a great shot I've seen of one coming into a field. In fact, I've flown an F-27 over Mare Island in Tauranga, an RNZAF one.
Oh, yeah?
They came to town for an exercise, and they had their F-27s there, and I worked for the radio station, and we got to go up for a flight for them. And the guy said, "Oh, do you want to have a fly?" I said, "No, too right." So I did like an orbit over Mare Island, which is about 10 k's off the coast of Mount Maunganui.
Oh,
it was
nice.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
We flew all the way down to Waihuru and back in it, doing 250 feet. That's right, over the Uruweras, right into the valleys and everything. It was amazing.
Wow.
We were hugging, the
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
And we had to make these waypoints and then turn back, come all the way back home, right over Lake Taupo, real low. It was incredible. In an F-27.
Sounds like fun.
Oh, I'd forgotten all about that.
Well, it was very successful for Fokker, and then led on, of course, to the F-28 and the 100 and it was their sort of entry into the modern era after the war.
The F-27 Friendship, our aircraft of the day. Okay, so that's another show. Paul Brennan here in Wellington.
And Martin in Wellington.
Okay, see you again in a fortnight.
Cheers.